Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? It's me, Comic Crack, and it's Sunday night. Um, we had our chat this afternoon. It was myself and Rasa on my channel. I don't know if that video's gone live on my channel yet, but you can go and check that out if you want to see us bullshit and shit talk back and forth. Right off the top, I want to give a huge shout out to Pops Comics. Pops Comics, Sean, an amazing YouTuber. He's based out of New York. I believe he has a shop in New York as well too. He has a lot of videos where he talks and just shows off a lot of collections he's buying. One of the things he had been talking about, him and a friend of his named Jason, shout out to Jason as well too. They had seen one of my live streams a few weeks ago at this point when I was talking about Matt Howarth, and it kind of sparked them to remember that in a collection I think he got years ago from a woman who had bought a collection from a woman who worked with Matt Howarth, I think is how the story went. And they got a ton of rare Matt Howarth related stuff that included like copies of his mini catalog, some mini comics work, some advertising stuff, some comics as well too, some original art, some the 45 sleeves that he was doing. He was doing this artwork for bands that didn't exist, and they were he did some artwork for kind of what their 45s would be. Those were something that was advertised in his comics for quite a while that I've seen in some of the earlier stuff. Pops Comics is having a live stream right now, and when you go back to his channel, and once that live stream has been completely uploaded, I think it's about the first 15 minutes into that live stream, he does a quick flip through where he shows off all of the stuff. What him and Jason ended up doing was putting all of this art and collecting it into these binders, these comic book binders with these sleeves. So he did kind of a flip through of that. So I would strongly recommend that you go and check out that video because it's incredible stuff that he's amassed from this collection. And of course, I said to him, hey, if you're ever looking at selling any of that stuff, I'm your man. And of course, he said, I'm not looking to sell any of this. This is for my collection. But he was saying that if there's any doubles, he'll be sure to reach out. So fingers crossed that there's a bunch of doubles. Amazing collection, though. He said that he's going to try to do in the next few weeks to a month or whatever, a actual kind of 4K video where he looks closer at all of this stuff. I will for sure let you know here on the channel when that comes to pass, just so you don't miss it, because I think it's something that you don't really see from some of these artists, and I think this is such an enormous collection of that very personal stuff and that mini comics work and that early. It looks like everything that he has in this collection is kind of mid to late 70s and then up into the 80s. There's a couple of things that are into the 90s, but the meat of it is kind of late 70s, early 80s. And just, it was page after page of just incredible Matt Howarth stuff. So I'll be sure to let you know when that video drops, but go and check out Pops Comics. Subscribe to his channel. He's got a ton of content there. Go and check out his stuff. So right off the top, I got myself a Gary Gay shirt in the mail this week. Fuck compose, fuck melody, dedicated to no one, thanks to no one, art is over. I'm an infamous Japanese noise band. And no, I didn't get myself printed on a shirt. There's been a bunch of people that have seen this shirt recently and asked me, why the hell did you get an image of yourself on a t-shirt? And what the hell does that even mean? So today, or this week rather, what is that there? Piece of cat fluff. This week, to start off the stream, let's talk about some music. We're going to talk about Gary Gay. We're going to talk about some tapes that I got. I've been listening to some tapes recently. I pulled out my little old man radio, just with the one mono speaker to kind of have here and play some music while I'm listening or while I'm reading. It's been really cool. I went to the flea market on the weekend, and he had a bunch of tapes there. This guy that I follow him on Facebook. Dooley Records is what the little store is called, their little storefront. He mainly deals in music. Recently, he's been buying a bunch of comic book collections, and he's been putting some of that stuff up for sale. There's been kind of dollar books and things that he's had for sale recently. He's opened up another little section. He's rented another little spot that's just going to be the comic book stuff. So when I was there, I picked out a couple of comics. We're going to be talking about those later. But he posted that he bought a collection of a bunch of cassette tapes. I'm a huge cassette tape guy. Always have been. I still am. I still got a ton of cassette tapes, like so many. And a lot of the music that I still listen to these days, especially noise and experimental music, they've always kind of put out releases on cassette tape. But there's also been a bunch of other styles of music that are just doing these cassette only releases as well as kind of the digital version. They're usually limited editions. So I usually end up snagging some of that stuff. Some more of that should be coming in the mail this week, I'm hoping, from a Heimat de Catastrophe, who I've talked about before. So I'll be sure to kind of show off those. He had a bunch of Bad Brains cassettes. They were a little pricey. I think they were $12 a piece. If I'm going to buy cassettes, I'm not necessarily, it's a little pricey for used cassettes. If it's an independent band and they're charging $10-12, I don't mind paying it for that stuff. For stuff that's kind of older and used, it's a little expensive. But there was one that he had. This was $6. And I think he was kind of like, oh shit, when he realized he put $6 on it. But he was good to his word. The sticker was on there. He only charged me $6. It's a Jimi Hendrix Radio 1. So some stuff live from Radio 1. I'm not sure the year. I think, hello, Lord Tatman, how are you? I think this cassette came with, when I was a teenager, I had a cassette box set of Jimi Hendrix stuff, and I think this was included on that. This tape was 88. Doesn't say here when the recording was. Obviously the recording isn't 88. 1966, 67. Yeah, so 1967, I think, is when this was recorded. So you get a bunch of liner notes. You get a bunch of notes for each of the songs. Stone Free, Day Tripper, Killing Floor. Yes, Killing Floor is on it. Lover Confusion, Driving South, Catfish Blues, Wait Until Tomorrow, Hear My Train A-Comin', Hound Dog, Fire, Hoochie Coochie Man, Purple Haze, Spanish Castle Magic, Hey Joe, Foxy Lady, and Burning of the Midnight Lamp. So I'm extremely excited about this. I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. I've always been a Hendrix fan. At bowling, every once in a while, I still put Are You Experienced on the jukebox. One of my all-time favorites. But I love Jimi Hendrix. Very, very excited about this tape to listen to this. Like I said, I'm pretty sure this was included on this box set. It was a 4-cassette box set, and I sold it a lifetime ago. And it's one of those things that I really regret selling. I wish I had it, and I keep my eyes out for it. Whenever I see cassette tapes and box sets, I always dig to see if there's that Jimi Hendrix one. I have yet to see it out there in the wild, though. Another thing that I got, I don't know if I ended up talking about this, but even if I did, we're going to talk about it again because it's a fucking incredible album. The band is called Moloch, and the album is called A Bad Place. They're a UK kind of doomy sludge band. I love the packaging on this. First, I mean, just look at the cassette itself. Is a beautiful kind of teal color. What is it? 5 songs? 4 songs? 5 songs. Concrete and Pain, Beast, Inhuman Contact, Hang, Deadweight, and Bad Gift. So 6 songs. But the packaging from this record label that's called Tartarus Records, I saw a couple of their other releases, and they're all like this. It's kind of this fold-out deal. I love the cover on this album, too. And such absolute grief. He just has his head in his hands. And then on the inside, just obviously experiencing a lot of pain in his life. And one of the other thing that I do love about this band is they seem to have a pretty good sense of humor, because even on this is their Bandcamp page, even on their Bandcamp, their band photo is this. And I just think that that's incredible. I mean, that shows, like I said, that shows also a sense of humor to my mind about your music and things. I think that's an incredible band photo. That's right up there with the Basil Wolverton photo where he has his head and he's leaning against the house. And that's kind of the artist photo inside one of his books, which I also think is just incredible. So there you go. So that's that music there. I haven't read the new Sandman at DC. I read 1 and 2 and thought Venditti did a good job. I actually looked at it when I was there last, but I haven't been reading it. That's the one that's currently coming out, right, Tatman? So that's that. So a little bit more music stuff, then we'll get into the comics. A couple of other things I've been listening to this week. Yes, Daryl D. Hello, Daryl D. Yes, so it is the new stuff. Okay, I'll have a closer look next time I'm in that shop there, Tatman. I'll have a flip through it again. This Garo Gary Gay was a duo. The main guy was Jintaro Yamanouchi, started in 1985, and they did a lot of kind of noise music and performance art and things like that. I think they met in like a bondage club. Him and the other guy who goes by the name Garo 30 is this guy here. So that's Yamanouchi there, and that's Garo 30 there. They met in a bondage, like an S&M club. And I think a lot of their earlier performances, they performed only in that club. These guys are their performances were on par with like a G.G. Allen, very explicit, usually Garo 30 masturbating on stage, while Yamanouchi did his noise performances and stuff. You can find some documentaries about them on YouTube. There's a really great documentary I found just the other day, like 35 minutes or something, that really goes into the history of the band. Obviously, if you're not into this genre of music, you won't get shit out of it, but I think it's great stuff. So the name Garo translates to vomiting. Gary is diarrhea, and then the non-lexical vocab of a gay is how the name goes. They had a whole bunch of different eras of stuff. They were kind of harsh noise and really crazy stuff, and then they really kind of transitioned to doing these kind of really ambient pieces and really kind of like field recordings and stuff. So I listened to some of that recently, and it kind of blew my mind. I hadn't really listened to too much of that stuff. This one here, this album called None Friendly, phenomenal listen. Like for those of you who are into like kind of meditational music and ambient music, this one is an incredible album. 58 minutes, I think, and it's just this one kind of chunk of kind of moving and increasing, decreasing in volume sounds. It starts to fade out. It comes back again for 58 minutes, and it really does become kind of meditative and really soothing. And it's interesting to hear stuff like that from a band who were just kind of so fucking crazy earlier on in their careers. I mean, if we just look at Tokyo Anal Dynamite, the track list here, 75 tracks, 14 seconds, 49 seconds, 29 seconds, all really short bursts of just balls out noise, like really just insane noise stuff. They went through this phase where they were kind of ripping off the Ramones. Every single song would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they'd bust into some noise. They'd say the name of the song. They'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they'd just blast into some noise. Just an amazing kind of act. A couple of the other highlights for me when listening to this stuff were, where are they? They did a whole bunch. They've done so much music. or so many albums rather, and so many pieces. The other ones that I really dug, this Decrescendo box set, there's two versions of it. One that came out in 2020, and I thought there was one that came out in 2022. I thought there was one. There is one other one. I just don't know where it ended up. Anyway, there's two versions of it, and it has kind of field recordings in it. It's field recordings and of like a park, and then some instrumentation on top of it, and it's just, again, really beautiful stuff. Vis-a-Vis is his record label as well too, so he ends up releasing some stuff just through Vis-a-Vis. He doesn't really have an internet presence. He prefers it kind of this way. If you want to order stuff from him, you have to go directly to him. You can send him an email, and you can buy stuff from him. So but a lot of the stuff you can find online as well too. Pray, Play, and Play. So 3 pieces on this one. Interesting. Anyway, so that was kind of a highlight. And then through that, I've always been a big fan of the Boredoms as well too. And this album here, 77 Boa Drum, filmed in 2000, or performed actually in 2007. I just saw it's up on YouTube, so you can see the whole performance, an hour and a half. There's a lot of documentary footage on the rehearsal of this album. It took place on 7/7/2007. 77 drummers. He had a instrument that's a bunch of guitar necks. It was 7 of them. Yamatsuka Ai is the kind of mastermind behind the Boredoms. He's an artist, and again, a performance artist and a musician, has been playing since like the 80s. He's performed with guys like John Zorn. He's done a ton of stuff on his own. He started out in the noise scene as well through this group called the Hana Tarash, who are really infamous within that kind of genre. Their most iconic performance is I driving a bulldozer into the actual performance space, like busting through the wall and kind of destroying things. So that was his kind of nihilistic, really in your face kind of performance for the noise scene. So he kind of went down in history for that. So at this stage of his career, he's kind of found this spirituality, and he's really has a different outlook on life, and his music really reflects that. This is a real big, if you want to get kind of hippy dippy about it, it's kind of a big drum circle to some degree. It's way better than a drum circle, because I know the type of imagery a phrase like that can evoke. Don't think drum circle, think just amazing performance. And he's kind of conducting the piece as it goes. He's playing some samples. He's doing some vocals, very little vocalization. He's playing his kind of guitar instrument as well too. And it was outside in New York, where it was just this live performance with all of these drummers in kind of like a spiral, with the kind of the Boredoms right in the middle, the band themselves right in the middle, and a bunch of the musicians spiraling outwards from there. It's been amazing so far. I'm almost done watching it. I was watching it this afternoon. Highly recommended. Boredoms 77 Boa Drum, the movie DVD. The channel is Human Bad. Looks like they only got 14 subscribers. I haven't looked at anything else they've done, but the band, the Boredoms, same thing. They've been around since 1986, and you can see a ton of releases, kind of punk rocky, kind of noisy, kind of experimental, kind of surf, kind of all sorts of different genres they've done through their career. Lots of really good stuff, though. I was a huge fan of theirs. And again, another band where I had a ton of their stuff. I ended up selling it all off because it was getting money. It was worth quite a bit, so I ended up selling a bunch of the stuff. And again, another one that I really regret. I wish I had some more of that music these days. Anyway, that is it. There's a new villain who uses death gas. Looks great. Okay, so this is in the Sandman one. Yeah, that's what I had a feeling looking at it. It seemed like it was that kind of golden era Sandman with the gas mask on from the Sandman Mystery Theater. I try to stay away from people who masturbate into their audience from the stage. Yeah, absolutely. I can appreciate that. All All right, let's get into what I've read. So, as usual, we'll start with the one thing this time that I didn't talk about in the stream, and that was the 4-issue book Supermarket from Brian Wood, and then art by someone named Christian. All 4 issues. I had this at one point as a collected edition, and I remember I don't think I ever finished reading it. Yeah, absolutely. It totally does. Yeah, drum circle. It's just I know that term. I want to drive people towards it, and I know that term can sometimes push people away from stuff like that. And that's great. Seller's Neck, thank you very much. I'm glad you're here. Always great to have some noise fans in the audience. And I absolutely love Phil Niblock a lot. Him and like guys like Charlemagne Palestine, who I had a chance to see live actually. Phil Niblock I never have. I've got a DVD of his though. That's a lot of his films that he did set to his kind of minimalist music. And it's just people at work, just repetitive, like these loops of people working. The Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black. I don't know if that's familiar to me. That's not ringing any bells, so I'll absolutely look into that one. So this is from 2006 from IDW. And I think when I had that collected edition, I think I had started reading it and it just wasn't doing much for me story-wise, even though the art is pretty beautiful. And I would say that I kind of had the same, response this time. This time I did actually sit and read all 4 issues. It seemed like it had a point and it just kind of didn't get there. It had enough action going through it to kind of keep you moving through the story. But honestly, it's the art in this one that's the selling point for me. I love the colors. I love those kind of just solid color backgrounds over here. I love the just imagery on stuff. And one of the other things I did really dig was when you run into some of the Yakuza gangsters there. I love the smoke effect there. And they just ended up looking badass. Those guys there look like, there's another Japanese band called Guitar Wolf. And they kind of remind me of the guys that would have been in that band there. But so pretty cool for the style of it. I just don't know if there's much story there. So it's this kind of teenage girl who's growing up in the suburbs. Her parents are really well off, and she's just a bored teenager, and she's kind of rebelling against all sorts of things. This is issue number 1. We don't know at the beginning. We don't know what it was that her parents do. Well, we know what they're currently doing, but we don't know. She even says it herself. She doesn't quite know how her parents became so wealthy and how they kind of came to the life that they lead. But here they are, and she's kind of rebelling against it, and she's, all against capitalism, and you guys are scumbags, and why are we supporting these companies that do X, Y, and Z? And then she goes out and kind of participates in a lot of that, like all of us. To some degree or another, there's things that go on in the world that piss us off. And then you kind of, at times you just don't have an option for some of this shit. So I feel like it's digging into some of those ideas, but again, it doesn't fully explore it. She's kind of just middle ground through the whole thing. She eventually finds out she comes home one day, her parents have been killed. They've left her a recording. She listens to the recording. That's when we realize that her dad used to be a Yakuza, was kind of the godfather of a Yakuza clan. And her mother was a Swedish porn actress who was kind of like the leader of that group of gangsters, because they make an appearance. These Swedish porn ladies make an appearance later on as well, too, trying to gain access to our main character, who has the key to what is a fortune that's locked away specifically for her. So the rest of the book is her trying to avoid getting killed and captured by these gangs, and trying to figure out how she can gain access to this fortune that's left for her. One of the things that the gangs want, especially the Yakuza, they want her to be the new leader. She obviously doesn't want that. And it sort of just kind of meanders from there as she goes in and out of malls and kind of hides out for a little bit, ends up meeting a couple of characters along the way too. So, yeah, it wasn't bad. It just didn't really do too much for me. But honestly, the draw here is the art. I mean, that panel is fantastic. It has that kind of like a little bit of James Stokoe type of vibes to it. It also just has this very, again, like posed and jump cut type of action scenes, or just even moving through space. It's a lot of fun. I wish I knew more about the artist off the top of my head. I wish I would have dug into something before the stream to tell you some of the other titles. But this was kind of a cheap bin find. The coloring looks fantastic as well, Tatman. Yes, I totally agree. And the art is just credited Christian, so I'm assuming that means that Christian has also done the coloring too. So, and it was just a 4-issue miniseries. Like I said, it does exist in a graphic novel format as well too. I don't remember if there was anything extra in that. It's been a long time since I've had a copy of that. But if you can find it cheap, like a lot of the stuff I end up talking about on here, if you can find some of this shit cheap, I say go for it, because it's pretty fun. They're pretty beefy books too, real kind of heavy stock for the front cover, so you're getting a good quality comic there for your dollar bin plundering. So that's all that I did not talk about on this afternoon stream. Let me move some shit around. When I was hunting for some comics and found the Jimi Hendrix tape, formed by Kembra Phaler, if that helps. No, I don't recognize that name either. Best described as high camp post go-go dyke noise. Fucking amazing. You've sold me there, sellers. You sold me. That's killer. So I ended up finding a few books, and we'll talk about some of those there. So I found an issue of Yellow Dog, issue number 23. I'm going to be bringing this one back because it didn't say anywhere that the cover was almost fully detached. So I put it in a bag, and I'm going to take it back next weekend. Normally the guys in town are really good with, like, hey, if there's a comic that they have for sale where there's some damage, they do really good on kind of labeling the front cover. This one was missed. I'm a little pissed about that. I like Yellow Dog as an anthology. I love the Undergrounds, but I never would have bought it if I would have known the cover was almost detached. Like, it's barely holding on. It's maybe holding on by about this much at the top here. The rest is completely separated. So, and it was $10, which is the other thing, and that's expensive for me to be buying an Underground comic. One that was in great condition. This is from Dan at Mad Cat Comics. Fulbert Sturgeon's Jesus Comics, issue number 3 for 5 bones. I haven't read that one yet. And amazingly enough, an issue of Hate Annual. The annual issues from Hate are kind of infamous. I know that Jared Osborne has said the similar thing, and I've heard a couple of other people, I'm sure, say this as well. When it came to the Fantagraphics Hate series, the Hate series was very easy to find around here. It came out on the regular. It was always at the comic shop, or maybe it didn't come out on the regular. I'm sure it had a pretty sordid history with coming out on time or off time. But when it came to the annuals, for some reason, the distribution of them was all over the place, and there was a bunch of them that I missed. At this point, I think I'm only missing 2. I think it went to 9 issues. I think I'm missing number 7 and 9, but I've got the rest of them. So they were really notoriously hard to get, no matter where you lived. So it's rare that I actually see these around. So I jumped on it. I think this one was like $12, which is pricey again, but considering that I never find this stuff, It was a no-brainer for me to pick it up. So we got a Buddy Bradley story in here. It wasn't that good of a read, honestly. It didn't kind of have that energy that I associate with Pete Bagg's characters, which is also a thing with the annuals. I think that happened a lot in the annuals, where once the Hate main series was over, it just kind of lost steam a little bit. And now it's kind of post marriage Buddy, and he has kids. I think there was still some good stuff coming, maybe where, because he starts wearing like an eye patch and a sailor's hat, and he owns a junkyard or something, I think is what happened. But this was definitely on the weaker side of the Buddy Bradley stories. Still really great to read. I've always loved Pete Bagg. And then what we get is we get 3 gigantic articles that Bagg wrote and illustrated for various magazines. And I tried to read one of these, and I completely lost interest after a page. This is the Miss America pageant that he covered, and just kind of what happened there. I feel sometimes like some of these guys in this era, they were sort of vying for a Hunter Thompson kind of thing, where, hey, I'm just going to go to these things and talk about my experiences there and all the crazy stuff I saw, as opposed to actually doing a look at what they were covering. I didn't read this article whatsoever. I guess this is a guy who was involved in animation. The name isn't familiar to me. There's probably some of you yelling at your computer saying, oh my God, I can't believe it, but it all means shit to me. Carl Wilson, or the best producer of the Beach Boys, if not the world, wasn't Brian Wilson. So there you go. Indy 2000. And then at the end, there's a story. This one was pretty great. A character called Lovey. And this was a pretty great one, actually, where Lovey and her friends kind of meet up with this guy in a wheelchair who's just a perv and is completely perving on these girls. He ends up hiding out in the ladies' washroom while Lovey's going to the bathroom. She can hear him wheezing in the shower, so she busts him. And this is kind of like classic Pete Bagg stuff. Like this was a pretty funny little strip there. Lovey ends up going to his house and posing in a Santa Claus costume on his lap. Her friends think that she's been abducted, so they kind of get their ski masks and bats on to come and save her, realizing that she's there voluntarily, until she finds out that he's been doing this for a long time with a bunch of women and having them dress up as Santa. It's still his kink. Yeah, so that was a pretty great little short there. So Hate Annual, that's a really nice find. I'm really glad I got that. It puts me kind of in tune with wanting to finish off that run. I think I have them on my wish list at my comic shop. So you wouldn't believe the undergrounds I saw at a con here yesterday. I'm really looking forward to making my next comic vid. Holy shit, Daryl, that's amazing. So I'm assuming that means you bought a bunch of them, hey? Hey, want to be Gonzo journalism? Absolutely. Wow, I've forgotten about Hate. Good memories. Curious if you received your Jenna Chop print, or was it a drawing from the House of Nerdstream? I haven't received it yet. I actually reached out to them on Twitter. Because they have a blue check mark and I don't, I couldn't actually private message them. So I reached out to the House of Nerd guy a couple of times, just with PMs, just saying, hey man, I felt kind of bad doing it. I let it go for quite a while, because I felt kind of like, fuck me, man. It was a free thing. I'm not going to bug this guy about it. If they don't send it to me, it's not that big of a deal. Then I was starting to think about it. It's like, man, I never win shit. So I sent him a message. He's not, I guess, on social media very much, because even to this day, he hasn't even seen the messages. So eventually I just posted something in my Twitter feed, and Lonnie Nadler was incredibly nice and reached out and was very apologetic and said, yeah, we're really sorry. The delay is on our end. We're going to get that out to you right away. So it was a copy of issue number 1 that they were both going to sign, and then they were going to do a little drawing inside of it. I'm really excited to get it still. I'm hoping it comes within the next week or so. They're in Canada as well, so that means the shipping will be a little quicker. I felt a little weird making a message like a private a post about it, but I didn't really know what else to do because, like I said, I never win shit online. I never win shit anywhere, honestly. So I was pretty excited to win something from a couple whose art and stories I've really been loving so far. So I figured I would do it in kind of like as nice a way as possible. So I'm hoping that stuff comes soon. I will absolutely show it off and I'll promote the shit out of it. And I'm looking forward to reading Sickness number 3. I think comes out soon. If not very, very soon. I don't know the date on it. I'm looking forward to it though. Yeah, there was a super fun stream. They seem pretty down to earth. Hope you get it from them soon. Yeah, they seem like really good people, and it was an incredible stream. It was great to hear them talk about it. I know her stuff a little bit more than I know his stuff, and I think she's incredibly talented. Her art is kind of mind-blowing, and I was really blown away in that stream to find out that all of the stuff in Sickness is digital, because it absolutely doesn't look like it. But it was a great stream, and they're kind of on a short list of people that if I ever get confident enough to kind of start talking to more people live on here, I would love to have them on and talk to them about their book and stuff. Yeah, so it was a really, really good to kind of hear the especially her start with the Sickness story that she's been working on for a long time, well before I think she even met Lonnie. So it was good to hear and see that it's actually coming to fruition, right? So the other thing I grabbed from Dooley Records, from his, he had a bunch of graphic novels as well. He was selling them for 60% off the cover price. He had the other 2 volumes of the series Wake. I've got the first 3, so I figured I'd finish it off. I think this is all of the stuff that was translated into English. These 2 volumes have 2 stories in each of them. The first one's only had 1. So this is story or book 4 and 5 in here. And this one is book 6 and 7. Unfortunately, they shrunk it with this final volume. They shrunk the size so we don't get this kind of album size format again, which is a bit of a bummer because even just flipping through this one, the text is pretty small. I mean, it's a little small even in this, but it's pretty small in this one. So I don't know how easy that is going to be to read. So I read this one. I talked about these in a stream. I don't even know how long ago at this point. They were fun. The writing left something to be desired. But again, I liked it enough and it was cheap enough. I think they were $6 a book. It was cheap enough to kind of want to dive into it and sort of finish off the run. And again, it's NBM. And NBM, Comcat, Cinebook, all of those companies, I'm always willing to take a chance on them. Catalan Communications, I'm always willing to take a chance on them because they're not something that pops up a lot. So I feel like when I see stuff from these publishers, I need to just buy it, even if I don't like it, and just add it to the collection. So it kind of stayed the same for this one. My feelings about this series are kind of the same. One of the things I was talking about this afternoon is, so the very, very Cliff's Notes version of Wake is actually a conglomerate of a whole bunch of different alien races that live on kind of this space station traveling through space. They go around and visit planets, and they'll send someone down to see how that planet is evolving. And if that planet is ready to meet aliens, I guess, or people from outer space. And if so, they'll interact with them. And if not, they'll kind of carry on. So it's a huge world of a bunch of different alien races. And that's one of the things that was hard to get back into when I started reading this story. There ends up being so many characters that I can't keep track of who the characters are and what their relation is to our main character, who's Navi. Navi is on the front here, right here. That's Navi, the only human that's on this Wake and wanting to find out about it. It's always been presented that she is actually the last human, that there are no other humans in existence. So she's kind of an anomaly for even the people on Wake, or even the species or the alien creatures on Wake. And she's kind of like our view into these worlds, right? So we're kind of thrown right into an adventure with this first story where she's on a planet that has this kind of hierarchy of, kind of royalty and peons, right? It's all been dependent on these aliens dropping eggs onto this planet. The first ones that were on the planet kind of evolve and ended up being kind of the royalty or the higher ups on that planet, and people who came later end up being kind of subservient to them. So it deals with kind of that power dynamic between kind of rich and poor, etc. And it was okay. It was a good story. It didn't kind of, it read nicely enough. It just took me a little bit to get back into it, and it took me a bit to kind of find my footing with where we were in this world. The second story kind of made me nervous off the top. When comics try to deal with kind of real world things, or when science fiction itself tries to deal with real world issues, and I'm talking like, well, you'll see when I start talking about it. Obviously, science fiction and comics and all sorts of things, there's always kind of a layer of commentary on the real world and commentary on things that we're going through. They're trying to build a relationship with the reader, right? But then there's another level where, especially considering what's going on right now, this next story is very much Israel-Palestine, is exactly what this story was. So it made me nervous because I also know that comics are notoriously kind of bad at dealing with real world issues, because again, we're dealing with comic books. We're not writing novels. We're not digging into the history of things and really looking for not even solutions, but viewpoints. And I say that very loosely because I know that there's some people that can write stories in comics and other kind of entertainment media where they can really bring something to those conversations. Science fiction does that. Star Trek did that, But this one really fell flat. And I think it's because of what's going on in the world right now. I really kind of I'm going to be interested to see how they tackle this. I was also worried in my head that they would tackle it in a way that would completely turn me off and that I would just want to get rid of these books. Fortunately, that didn't happen. They didn't take that much of a fucking idiotic view of things, but they did. And again, of course they did, because it's a fucking comic. So let me say that multiple times right out of the gate. It's a comic, and I realize that. They dealt with it in a very comic booky way. It was kind of, things came to a conclusion. Navi had a hand in kind of bringing peace to a situation. They went through the Wake's kind of political judgment, law system, and everything came out okay. And supposedly she did her part to kind of help these people come to terms with, hey, now they know that our legal system is on their side. Now they know that our politicians, it's one step towards a good thing. Like, being involved in their system is what's going to help the situation, not kind of addressing the situation. Because one of the big issues in it is, one of the big demands that these people have when they take Navi as a, when they kidnap Navi, and one of their demands is they want access to medicine that they need for their people, that the rest of the people on Wake who are rich have access to and can gain access to at any time. They're never given the medicine in here, at least not that I read. So their biggest thing that they wanted, they never actually get. And instead they get taken to court and not sentenced to death. They get sentenced to doing some kind of community work or something. But the idea of the medication isn't really talked about anymore. So yeah, I mean, it's something. I don't think it's a book that I can recommend. It's not a book that I hate. I just found this, especially now talking about it again, because I talked about it a little bit this afternoon, kind of sitting with it again and thinking about it again. It really doesn't sit with me as anything that was also really great to read. The other issues I think were a little more entertaining than this one. I think this one just tries to take on too much. And the other thing with stories like this is it's not a Star Trek world. I was saying this afternoon that I think that's one of the things that it has going against it with the Star Trek universe. If you want to tackle some real world current problems, there's a much smaller window that you can look at that through, whereas this one is so vast that I think that really takes away from kind of getting a personal story out of it or getting something that can be pared down. It feels like there's so many elements going on in this story that it sort of takes away from getting any clear message through. And I would say that that kind of extends to each of the stories that I've read so far. I'd asked that same question in the stream, whether Cha worked digitally or not, because I really couldn't tell. Oh, it was you that asked that question. Yeah, there you go. Easily deceived by the physicality of her art. Absolutely. Science fiction stories seem to work best as allegories for the present. Absolutely, they do. Looks Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, okay, I can see some of that for sure. It also sort of reminded me of a Rick Remender story, to be honest, with the kind of creatures, with the kind of way that the story was trying to be told. It seemed like a less proficient Rick Remender kind of story, something that's he's not quite there yet, you know. You mentioned Star Trek. I think immediately of the Cardassian occupation of Bajor in Deep Space Nine as the best example of the Israel-Palestine. Yeah, absolutely. Conflict presented allegorically in popular entertainment. Absolutely. Deep Space Nine, highly underrated in my opinion. Deep Space Nine is a phenomenal show in the Star Trek kind of canon. I was rewatching it when we still had Netflix, but we don't have Netflix anymore, so I gave it up, and it's a good reminder that I should try to find that stuff online and keep watching it. So that's Wake. I feel like I've really talked a lot, so I may move faster through this next stuff here because I do have quite a bit. So speaking of reminders, here's these next few. I'm just really going to fly through. We're on issue number 4 of Sacrificers. I'm still on board for this one. I still think it's an entertaining book. I think he does really well at kind of pacing that story. And at this point with issue number 4, I feel like we know enough about the world and the characters and their relation to one another that personally, I would like to see issue number 5 get to the next level storytelling wise. I feel like at this point I need a little something. I'm going to stick with it regardless of that, if that comes or not. Because again, I'm also not a fucking writer. He's the writer. So I'm going to accept whatever it is that he wants to give us next. I'm just kind of hoping that there's something that comes this next one to kind of keep us engaged. I've got faith in him though. The pacing in this has been really amazing. The story itself is pretty entertaining as well. Again, there's nothing kind of mind-blowing about the story itself. It's again this kind of power dynamic. It's gods versus humanity. It's these kind of humanity that's coming to terms with making these sacrifices to the gods and what's the point of it and yada yada, all these things. So I'm curious where this story is going. We've got a couple of main characters here that are really intriguing, and I'm just wondering how he's going to handle that. So looking forward to the next issue of that. Been on a big Firefly kick. We actually rewatched the series. I think we've got 1 episode left, and then we're going to watch the movie. Every single time it's on, I love it. This Fall Guys is pretty good. Even issue 3, it's still a pretty good. I don't know if it's one of the better Firefly related books I've read, but this first issue was very strong. It's fallen off a little bit, and one of the biggest issues I have with it is, while I don't need realism in my art, I feel like there's too many characters that don't look like the characters that I know. so it makes it hard to follow sometimes. The story itself is pretty intriguing. They're basically set up. There's someone trying to assassinate a politician, and our Firefly crew, the Serenity crew, has been set up as the ones that are the assassins. So they're now trapped on this planet, and they're looking on what the hell they're going to do next, because now obviously they're being hunted down on this planet for the attempted assassination of a political leader. Worth it. I think it's only 5 or 6 issue miniseries. They've got a bunch of Francavilla covers. This is just the one that was in my pull box. Yeah, if you're a fan of the show, I'd say go for it. So I've been digging through my Firefly and Serenity books, and this is one that I had in the drawers that I hadn't read. This is the 20th anniversary special from Boom Studios, and this was a solid issue. I'm just going to remind myself of what the first story was. Oh, yeah. So this is from 2022. Oh, that's right. Yes. We get a little bit of a Shepherd book story here. So this is kind of because I think in the Firefly series, there's a whole bunch of people that have died. Jane is dead. Shepherd is dead. Malcolm Reynolds isn't the captain anymore. Haley is now the captain. Zoe and Wash had a child. That child is now kind of grown up. I think she's 18, 19, 20. I think she's supposed to be around that age. So this one brings us back a bit, and they're on this planet waiting for the Firefly to get repairs so they can come and land and pick them up. And while they're there, there's a craft that comes crashing to the planet, and Shepherd Book recognizes it and kind of tells Serenity, stay away. I know you guys are ready to come pick us up. Just trust me. I don't have time to explain. Just stay away. Shepherd was part of the Alliance at one point in his past. So the Alliance is kind of like the empire of this universe. And he was involved in this mission to create this ship that could basically be used as a weapon, and it was programmed to be used as a weapon, where it was just going to go out like a drone. Basically, it was used as a drone to just go out, and its programming was to just kill everything that it came into contact with. So it's crashed and damaged, so they're breaking into it. And of course, because he still has everything is kind of retinal scan, face scan, whatever, he still has access to this machine, and it recognizes him. And it's kind of a classic kind of sci-fi tale of a human having a conversation with a machine to try to change its programming that, hey, you don't want to kill anymore. You want to kind of, everything is okay. We're not at war. You can actually go and explore the universe as opposed to killing everybody. So it was a pretty good little story. And again, like the art in this Serenity and Firefly comics in general is very, it's up and down at best. There's some where the art, I just don't like it, but because it's that universe, I read it because I just love the show more than anything. So I'm jonesing for anything Firefly related. So bringing up DS9 is certainly not to trivialize the actual horrors happening in Gaza as we speak. Absolutely. And obviously it's the same thing with me talking about all this stuff too. That is not my intention. I hope it didn't come off like that. I don't think you came off like that at all, Sellers. So I wouldn't worry about it. And I totally agree with you, because it's a fucking horror show over there right now. And I can't even imagine. Back to talking about comic books in my basement in Canada. Badlands, this was the only issue that came out from Vortex Comics from 1990, I think was the year on it. It then went to Dark Horse in 1991 for a miniseries where they got a chance to tell the whole story. We start off with a character questioning this old woman who has seen John F. Kennedy being shot. She was there. It takes place in Texas. West Texas, 1964 is the date that we get here. So she's talking about how there's no way it was that guy in the book depository because the shot came from just over my shoulder. And we find out that, why am I talking to you? And are you going to be able to help me? And we find out pretty quickly that, yeah, he's there to help you. All right. He's there to silence you. So right out of the gate, we get kind of a, who is this guy? Who does he work for? Why are they trying to stifle this information? And then we immediately jump into, once he's kind of dispatched her, we jump into who turns out to be one of our main characters getting out of prison and kind of getting introduced back into the life of crime that he was once in. I think he was a car thief and did a bunch of other stuff for the mob. Ended up in prison. It hasn't really been spelt out exactly what it was that he's done. He, of course, claims that he's never coming back. We all know that that's not going to be true. He's going to end up working for the mob once again. So it's it was an interesting issue. The coloring, we were talking about the coloring this afternoon as well too, and there's parts of the coloring that I really like, and there's other parts where it just seems like to me that maybe they were trying something with the coloring, and then when it got printed, it just came out way darker than they intended, unless they intended this to be very, very bold like this, which again could absolutely be their choice. But it kind of stands out where there's some coloring here that I kind of dig. I think it's done really well, but then there's stuff that just is, it's a little too much. And even again, like I love to do, just looking at this stuff from a distance and kind of blurring your eyes a little bit. Some of these pages are pretty standout with these big, bold chunks of color. Like stuff like this, I think is pretty great. I kind of like the colors on that page and that shadows that are going on there, even though whatever shadow is falling on his face, I can't quite make out what that would be coming from. Yeah, so anyway. So it ends inevitably enough. He gets back into the life of crime. He's asked to come along on a shakedown to this local liquor store. He's given a gun and said, you don't say anything, you don't do anything. You're there just to kind of put fear into these guys. I'll do the talking. I'll deal with everything. Don't you do anything. A guy jumps out from the back room with a shotgun, and our man shoots him without hesitation, which then leads to, you got to get out of town. I got a guy I can set you up with. You just go now. I'll take care of everything here. It's all been a ruse. The guy who was supposedly shot gets back up and is both of them and then killed by our kind of thug in the story here. So it's a pretty interesting setup to a story where I'm not sure where it would be going. I think around this time there seemed to be a lot of like, even Shade the Changing Man from Vertigo DC was dealing with kind of the Kennedy assassination and the idea of in Shade the Changing Man, they traveled across America, they traveled across the states, and it was really, there seemed to be a lot of books that were talking about like using that as a, what are we as Americans? What is it to be an American these days? That kind of analysis of themselves. So it's it even seeped into the Vertigo, or sorry, not the Vertigo, Vortex comics here. So this is Stephen Grant and Vincent Guarino are who is on Badlands. So I am curious enough that I would check it out from Dark Horse. I'd be down for checking it out. A Vince Guarino classic. Oh, there you go. I recommend reading Haywire and Guarino's run on Whisper if you haven't. So that's where I know his name. I have read a bunch of Whisper. I think I still have them. I haven't read all of Whisper. I didn't realize that's where he was from. Good work. Canary by Scott Snyder was an interesting read. I liked it more than The Midnight Show. Are you talking a new book, Canary, as well? So that's Badlands. Let's have some more water here. Maybe all, yes, they're both new. Okay, cool. I'll quickly talk about this one. Grendel Warchild, 10-issue series from Dark Horse. I read the first 5. I'll probably end up talking about this more once I've read all 10 of them. But so far, I'm digging it. And one of the things I'm really enjoying about this, I'm not as familiar with the Grendel universe. I have volume 2, most of volume 2. I'm missing some issues. But I don't know too much about the Grendel universe. What I do know is that it's really held in high regard and people love this book. So I've always wanted to dive in, and this is one of the mini series that just seemed to pop up everywhere. And I got most of these issues for really cheap. So I ended up buying them and eventually just keeping my eyes out and really focusing on getting this one. I've got a couple of other mini series as well, but honestly, this isn't a horrible place to start. And one of the reasons why is because of the back matter. In the back matter of the other issues, every single issue, they go into one of the Grendels, one of the previous volumes, and give you kind of the history of that character, what happened, a kind of Cliff's Notes version of what happened within that series. Talks a little bit about just the world of these Grendels and like the kind of order of the Grendel is what it turns into be, right? Because it really becomes this movement. It becomes almost this Mandalorian-esque kind of thing where you enter into the life of being a Grendel and you commit to that lifestyle. So that's pretty cool to read that stuff. Unfortunately, those do contain spoilers. It contained a pretty big spoiler for volume 2 that I'm, like I said, not even close to finishing, which ultimately isn't the end of the world, but it's sometimes more about the journey anyway. At the end of this first issue, he talks about what happened with Grendel, the character, and why he's been gone so long from writing this book. He touched on it in the Cartoonist Kayfabe interview as well, too, that one of the things that people forget about when you are doing a creator-owned book, that's great that you have that creator-owned contract, but if the company that you're writing for goes into bankruptcy, your character and your book become an asset of the company, and that asset doesn't get released until the bankruptcy has been completed, until all of that work has been completed. So that's kind of what happened with Grendel. It got tied up in this bankruptcy event, I guess. So even though he owned the character, he couldn't do anything with that particular story and with that character, I think, for a period of time. And he goes into a bit more detail in the back of this one, and it's super interesting. So for the issue itself, I'll show you the back matter in this one too. So, and then from there on, this is issue number 2. Now we get introduced the world of Grendel, a class of distinction, and talking about what it is to be a Grendel. And then it starts going through the volumes. So this one is created, written, and inked by Matt Wagner, penciled by Patrick McKeon, and color art by Bernie Moreau and Catherine Delaney. But Bernie Moreau's coloring is pretty incredible. I think it was in here. I was saying this afternoon that because I've been reading The Jam and because I read Mackenzie Queen and I've been reading some Bernie Moreau stuff, it's hard with a series like this to kind of take it serious all the time. I know that it's not a series that's deathly serious. I know that there is some humor in this for sure, but it really puzzles me. And I think one of the big things that puzzles me the most is we get these Bisley covers that are incredible, and then we get this interior art that is almost kind of comical. And in my head, again, I'm associating it with The Jam. Sorry, I think I might have said The One before. I meant to say The Jam. That it kind of reads a little, I'm wondering if that's how it's supposed to read to me. And also, I was showing this panel this afternoon. Doesn't that remind you of Corbin there, that boy? I don't know if Daryl D is still in the room, but that image there just really, really looks like something out of a Richard Corbin book. The look on his face, the way it's colored, really amazing stuff. So pretty cool. I'm digging it. I don't quite know where it's going to go. I feel like I am missing a little bit of context, even though that backup stuff really does a good job of kind of bringing you into the world. I know that this boy that he's trying to protect is kind of next in line to become kind of a ruler, I think. The father is dead. The mother is trying to get him back. And this Grendel has been sent to protect him in case of the death of his father, and that's exactly what's happened. So most of this becomes like a chase kind of book. I'm hoping to read the next 5 issues within the next week or so. So once I've kind of read all 10, I'll have a much better picture of what's been going on, I guess. Grendel, if you get into Grendel, make sure you read 4 Devils, 1 Hell. I think that's the other one that I did read, Tapman. I think that's one of them. And only tangentially related, but Altman's Secret Honor is an excellent piece of presidential paranoia committed to celluloid. Okay, that's one I haven't seen. I love Altman. Can't believe I haven't seen that one. Also, the crossovers between Grendel and Batman and Grendel and Shadow are incredible. That's very cool. The Grendel and Batman did actually make an appearance in a box I was looking at recently, and I passed it over. So I'll keep that in mind. I recommend the Grendel anthology, Black, White, and Red as well. Murderer's Row of guest artists. Cool. Corbin homage detected. Yeah. Grendel has an interesting timeline for sure. Yeah, for sure. It's a really intriguing character. It's an intriguing world. I'm interested in it for sure. So I don't think this will be the last time that I read Grendel. We'll see how much I dive in once I've finished through this 10 issues. And finally, the last thing, last but not least, is a drink of water. Finally, for tonight's stream, we visit our friend Nate. Nate, who was kind enough to send us an enormous box of comics. Go and check out that video. It is in my archive. Harrier Comics is a company from the UK that I've been interested in for, I don't know, the past year or so. I don't remember when I first got the stuff. It might have been last year. I don't remember. It wasn't too long ago, though. And every time I read something new from Harrier, honestly, I'm impressed each and every time, even if some of the stuff turns out to be something that doesn't kind of last for me as far as like enjoyment. There was that Shock, was it called Shock Treatment? That anthology had some incredible oddball art and stories in it. There was a lot of stuff that really fell flat, but oh God of Grind, hello, how are you? There was a bunch of stuff that did fall flat in that, but there was enough in there that it was really a pretty amazing little miniseries. Avalon was their showcase magazine. I think it went, I don't even remember. We were looking at it on my comic shop. Did it go 14 issues? Let's have a look here. Let's see. Yeah, 14 issues. And currently right now on Lone Star or mycomicshop.com, they're carrying 11 of those 14 issues, and they're all priced at a very reasonable $2.50, which is probably even more reasonable for those of you in the States, because don't they offer free shipping once you hit a certain threshold at My Comic Shop? This is an incredible first issue. And the standout story is our kind of cover here. This Diana is the Power is what the story is called. This is from 1986, the Golden Age. That's written by Rob Sharp, sorry. And then the art is by Star Johnson. Rob Sharp writes a couple of things in here. But this Diana is the Power is a stunner. It's that classic kind of British take on a superhero origin story is basically what this is. Although at this point, we don't know if this is going to be a superhero origin story or a supervillain origin story. I'm leaning towards more of a superhero origin story. Our main character who kind of gains these powers is a cop. She's living in a world that does have superheroes. She's very familiar with them. She's been questioning herself lately of like, what's the point of me being around in this in the police force in a world of superheroes? They can do a lot more. I wish I was a superhero. She ends up getting snatched off the street to a bunch of like bikers and punks and thugs. And of course, you suspect the worst. And that's not what happens at all. They're kind of snatching women off the street so they can open this box that they have, because it's attached to some sort of magical elements or some sort of demon or something like that. But everybody who opens it, like this previous woman here, they end up dying. Our main guy here gets scarred and is blinded when he opened up the box. So they keep snatching women off the street and getting them to open this box to see if they can find out what it contains. And our woman is the chosen one, basically. So we get these fantastic panels as she kind of gets this power from within this artifact. And she ends up kind of turning on everybody and kind of melting people's faces, gouging out people's eyes, just laying waste to all of the bikers. So it's an unbelievable story. The black and white art is incredible. It's got that, like I said, it's got that British kind of anarchist vibe to the story itself. I feel like it's going to be one of those from that era that sort of not necessarily deconstructs superheroes, but doesn't present superheroes in any sort of positive light. I don't know if this story ended up running for the entire run of Avalon. Let's have a scroll down here to number 14. Stitch in Time, Maltese. No, it doesn't say in issue 14. Anyway. Diana is still in issue 12 here. So, although it says it's part 3 in issue number 12. So maybe it wasn't something. Oh no, there's Diana is the Power again in issue number 10. So maybe it ended up running in a whole bunch of the issues. It doesn't look like every single one though, which is a little bit of a disappointment. I was hoping that it was a story that they would really open up on. So I think the idea from the kind of letter from the editor in the beginning was they wanted to get a bunch of stories presented to them that could potentially be Harrier series. And these are the ones that I guess didn't really go anywhere. But like I said, this is a highlight of this issue. It's an amazing read. I'm very, very curious to see where that story goes. Like any good anthology, it wouldn't be an anthology if you didn't hear someone say some of the stories worked and some of them didn't. This Mutant Love is one of them that, especially after that Diana is the Power, just didn't hold anything for me. I thought it was kind of dull. The cartoony style, which normally wouldn't bother me, I think just it didn't do anything for me in this kind of context. It felt very out of place. Then we get into some more art here. Pete Martin does the art for this first one-pager called The Alchemist. A kind of a stupid little gag cartoon, but the art is fucking gorgeous. That opening panel just on its own is incredible. He gives himself the power to turn anything to gold just by touching it. So, of course, he has to sneeze, touches his nose, and turns himself to gold. And then the other one that was kind of a fun, again, it was like a superhero kind of origin one. And the other one that's written also by Rob Sharp. So he was throwing a couple of stories at the wall to see which one would stick. The art in this one is Art Weatherall. Yes, Art Weatherall. And then Staz Johnson was the artist in the Diana story. I think this main kind of character here that's going to be kind of like the Charlie from Charlie's Angels of this little superhero squad, or the Professor X I think he's a vampire. I think this is a world that has like vampires and monsters. And in order for these selected group of people to get these superpowers, they just have to believe in themselves and they just have to believe in it. And that's kind of how they get their powers. So it was an intriguing one. Again, curious to see where this story goes. And then finally for this anthology was a character called Grun. And it really kind of reminded me of Dennis Fujitaki. Sort of had that Dalgota vibe to some of the art. It also had heavy Matt Howarth vibes, to bring it full circle to the beginning of our conversation. Like that looks like a character right out of a Matt Howarth, Lady Hiroshima, or the Mad Princess, I think is what it's called, or the Mad Empress world there. She looks like a Matt Howarth character with that eye makeup. And those two right there. That looks like Howarth all day. Not much in this story, even though the art is kind of appealing to me. There wasn't much here story-wise that really got me going or anything. And then a nice ad on the back that's looking very Spain Rodriguez. Like those characters look unbelievably like Spain Rodriguez could have drawn them. And speaking of which, I saw a photo today on my Twitter stream of Julie Strain. A nudie photo of Julie Strain, and the way she was kind of posed and the way she was kind of presenting herself and the camera angle, man, did it look like a Spain Rodriguez drawing come to life. It was pretty incredible. I also didn't realize she was married to Kevin Eastman at one point. I think she died in 2021, died a couple of years ago. I didn't realize she was married to Kevin Eastman of TMNT fame. So Avalon, I've only got one other issue of this. I think it's issue 7 or something. I'm on the hunt. This was great. Harrier is a hell of a company, man. They did some really fun comics. So if you come across any of this stuff, there's the logo. If you come across any of this stuff in the 50-cent bin, or if you're in the UK, the 50p bin, I'd say give it a shot. I think it's all worth your time. So let's see. Small press books from the 1980s are becoming more and more popular. They are. Hey, well, that's good to know. I mean, I think that's partially because they're out there in abundance and they're out there for cheap. It's always worth checking them out. Come across some Harrier comics and back issue piles, but never Avalon. Less complex cartoonish art has its charms too. Absolutely, it does. But I'm partial to Harvey Comics. Yeah. And again, that's not a slam on less complex cartoonish art. I happen to love that kind of cartoonish art. I just felt like after a story that was kind of as grim and heavy as the Diana, it was really kind of poor planning on their part putting together an anthology. Maybe you want to put that story after like a Grun or something. Like maybe that's a end of the comic kind of story, because it really felt out of place with kind of that heavy and dark themes of the other stuff. But I've got nothing against less complex and cartoonish art. I love it. And that's it. Yep, that's it for this week. Thanks very much, everybody. Sellers, it was great to have you here. Thanks so much for your comments throughout the stream. Lord Tatman, always good to see you. God of Grind, nice to see you as well. Who am I missing? Paul in the 619. Daryl D, of course, Daryl D TV. If you don't know Daryl D, go and check out his channel. Lord Tatman, I think I already said. So thanks very much, everybody, for showing up, and have a good week, and we'll see you next week. And Sellers, I'm going to scan back to that noise suggestion that you had there to make sure that when I end the stream, I don't lose it. Here we go. All right, everybody. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you.